The discovery that he was near a breakthrough left Kai Yang ecstatic. For it took him 3 years to make it to the tempered body 3rd stage. But on the 2nd day of obtaining this book, he had broken through, and now once again he will break through again. This training speed also made Kai Yang somewhat scared. Practicing the tempered body record consumed a large amount of stamina. So Kai Yang rested afterwards and slowly regained his stamina. After he had regained his stamina, he ate some of the remaining food and continued his search for the herbs. Yesterday he had traveled to all the places from his memory that could potentially grow his required herbs. Today he would have to rely on luck. Fortunately, the value of these herbs were not high, so the chance of finding them today was still high. After an entire day of searching, Kai Yang had found a total of 78 herbs and 2 3-leaved chaos spirit flowers. This time he had finally found the herbs he required to activate the incense burner, but the quantity he had was still lacking. Time passed by, and soon darkness came. Kai Yang was still awake though. It was not because he wasn't tired, but rather that he was too hungry to fall asleep. Asterisk. And oh. Originally he had planned to hunt some wild game, but had not even seen a single rabbit. Unfortunately he could only find some fingernail-sized berries which were very sour. When he finished eating them, it only made him feel even more hungry. If I knew that this was going to happen, I would have brought more rice balls. Kai Yang repented. There is no shop in these desolate areas. Where is he going to find food? This hunger was a real embarrassment. Kai Yang then saw in the distance a hint of a fire. Instantly his energy came back. Picking himself up, he walked towards it. They dared to light a fire in a forest. These people were either idiots or they had nothing to fear. This time, these people belonged to the latter. When he approached, a person near the fire thundered, "Who?" TL and ED, T to the power of T. Kai Yang, you're finally going to make some friends. At that moment, Kai Yang felt his muscles tighten and his spine shiver. The 2 people by the fire were vigilant. One was tall and the other was short. One had a burly physique and held a bow with an arrow notched. He pointed the arrow at Kai Yang. The other was a young boy, aged about 11, and his eyes were bright and held no trace of fear. In this boy's hand was also a bow, and he also had notched an arrow back, but it was much smaller. Although Kai Yang was faced with the 2 arrows, he didn't have the slightest intention to retaliate. Walking around, he acted as if their threats were nothing big. Take it easy. I only entered the mountain to collect herbs, Kai Yang quickly said. After they heard this, the 2 people looked at each other. The burly, I really want to say buff, slowly lowered his bow and arrow down. He then signaled for the boy to relax and laughed. I had thought that the fire had attracted a wild beast, but it was just a false alarm. Sorry, I'm sorry, Kai said, slightly embarrassed, and laughed. Touching his forehead, the burly man waved towards Kai Yang. Come, the nights are cold and surviving alone here will not be easy. When he heard this, Kai Yang walked up and sat next to the fire. Beside him, the burly man kept looking at Kai Yang and couldn't but feel pity when he saw Kai Yang's thin, bony body. Now that they were sitting together, it would be natural to talk to each other. From this chat, Kai Yang learnt that this father and son pair lived at the foot of the mountain and came here to hunt and earn a living. Although they weren't rich, it was enough to maintain adequate food and clothing. The boy, although he was young, was a veteran at hunting. And along with his father, they had come to Black Wind Mountains many times to hunt. Thus their knowledge of the mountain was far greater than Kai Yang's. Kai Yang also told them a bit about himself. After he told them that he was a Sky Tower disciple, the burly man was taken aback. While the little boy became more interested in Kai Yang and kept on glancing at him with his glossy, black eyes. The Han man said, my son also wanted to train to become a practitioner, but his talent was not enough and he was refused. So he practically worships you people. This statement made Kai Yang recall the past 3 years and his experiences. Not only did it move him deeply, it also made him softly rub the boy's head with affection. When he was about to say something, Kai Yang's stomach grumbled loudly. The little boy stared blankly and suddenly laughed out loud. From his bag he took out some dry rations and gave it Kai Yang. This once again made him very moved, but he didn't accept. Kai Yang looked at the burly man and he smiled. "Eat it. It seems that you did not eat anything today." This time Kai Yang didn't reject the offering and quickly wolfed down the rations. After chatting some more, the three then went to sleep around the fire. Though Kai Yang didn't dare sleep too heavily, if any danger were to approach the father and son, he would be able to react. He also considered this to be returning the favor for giving him the rations previously. Fortunately, the night passed peacefully and nothing happened. When the morning arrived, Kai Yang didn't wait for the father and son to wake before quietly leaving. But before he left 2 herbs behind as a thank you for last night. If these 2 herbs were crumpled, they had a healing effect. Since they were constantly in the mountains, these herbs were bound to be useful to the father and son pair. With the eastern purple gas increasing in volume, Kai Yang trained the tempered body record for half an hour. When he finished his practice, Kai Yang took in a large breath of the purple gas, causing his meridians to suddenly shake. A warm feeling then began surging through his body, with the energy in his meridian swirling endlessly. The tempered body 5th stage. His intuition was correct, he indeed broke through today. After practicing for half an hour, he really broke through to the next stage. Kai Yang was extremely happy and felt more and more grateful towards the golden skeleton in his body. Although it had not been very long since he obtained the proud golden skeleton, he had broken through twice thanks to it and the tempered body record. This speed was simply unmatched. And this was practicing under quite a number of restrictions. If he could practice all the time, what speed would he reach then? This thought left Kai Yang somewhat speechless. Though after all, the tempered body was only the foundation to becoming a true warrior. Training the early stages were easier, the higher the realms, the greater the difficulty to train in. After a quick rest, Kai Yang continued to search for herbs. Today he had yet again gained quite a harvest. He had collected more than a dozen herbs and caught a plump rabbit, solving his food problems. This was already the 3rd day of his mountain journey and he had reached the end of the 10-mile safety zone. Any further and Kai Yang dared not to enter inside, for with his current strength his only option was to become food for the beasts within. Although he did not go too deep, his harvest was still quite good. He had collected more than 20 different types of herbs, and counting the previous 2 days he had 40 different types, making his journey here very fruitful. Unfortunately, the 2 main herbs that he needed were very small in quantity. To find 40 different types of herbs in 3 days was no small harvest. Even if they were all ordinary grade, lower rank herbs, he was still able to exchange them for a fair amount of contribution points. But this greatly reduced his training time, doing more harm than good. It was now the afternoon and Kai Yang had started to walk towards the track that would lead him back to Sky Tower. Kai Yang was only given 3 days of leave, so he had to return before tomorrow morning, otherwise there would be harsh punishment waiting for him. Kai Yang felt he had plenty of time and was certain that he could return before dark. After all, he was only 100 miles away, not a long distance. In his heart he held great anticipation with regard to the Black Book's 3rd page. Thinking about the results it would bring for him made him delighted and put a bounce in his steps. Halfway through his journey back, Kai Yang heard an unexpected, piercing cry not too far from his position. There was the sound of a child screaming, crying mixed in. When he heard this he paused his footsteps and strained his ears. Soon after, his face changed and Kai Yang swiftly ran towards the direction of the sound. When he was listening to the sound, he recognized it as the sounds of the father and son pair from the night before. And that child's crying sound was from the little boy. Those two probably had encountered some sort of trouble, or why would they make such a ruckus? Last night they had given Kai Yang some of their rations, and even if it were for their past kindness, how could he just ignore their trouble? As he ran towards them, the father's roaring became increasingly desperate and the boys grew softer and softer. Kai Yang's face gradually hardened and he started to have a bad feeling. By the time Kai Yang arrived, the father's roar could no longer be heard and he only saw a dark cave in a high hill. To the side of the cave, in the midst of some bushes, tangled between some spider webs, was a silver bow. This bow, the same one the little boy had been holding the previous night. Without thinking, Kai Yang threw this possessions onto the ground, heightened his senses and plunged straight into that dark and sinister cave. Although the light inside the cave was not bright, it was still enough to see. When he looked around, Kai Yang was shocked to discover that the cave was covered in webs. On the walls and the ground, they crisscrossed each other and varied in thicknesses. Layer upon layer, the road ahead was blocked by the multitude of webs. Not only that, the cave was damp. The water dripped down at a steady pace, and when Kai Yang took a step forward, his foot sank into the ground. Steeling his nerves, Kai Yang walked to the sound of deep breathing. Only he saw a large human-sized cocoon spun from a spider's thread in a chrysalis-like state. At the top, it revealed a human face. That face belonged to the burly man from the night before. Worriedly, Kai Yang dashed over to the trapped hunter, his worry eased upon discovering that he was only unconscious. Hearing Kai Yang calling to him, the hunter groggily awoke and called feebly, "Save the child! My son was dragged further inside. I beg of you, please save my child." Got dragged inside. This shocked Kai Yang, as he struggled to free the hunter from the web. Sadly, the web was too strong for his current strength. Being unable to break it, he could only temporarily give up. Diving into the hole, he chased after the little boy. From behind, the hunter warned, "Be careful. That is a demonic spider beast." When he heard the words, demonic spider beast, Kai Yang's heart thumped loudly. These demonic beasts were not like ordinary wild animals. They loved to slaughter. They were true ferocious beasts, and Kai Yang was not a match for even the lowest among them with his current strength. In the Black Wind Mountains, the reason why the first 30 miles were deemed a safe zone was precisely because there were no ferocious beasts. Unfortunately, it seemed, one had appeared. This was seriously outside one's expectations. Now that he knew it was a ferocious beast, Kai Yang's movements became more and more cautious and soft. Slowly, he groped his way through the tunnel, and after about 10 feet, he spotted the little boy. The son was in a similar situation to his father, wrapped up in a cocoon which was suspended in mid-air by a larger spider web. At the side of the little boy, there was an enormously large flower-patterned spider sucking on a straw. The straw was inserted in the little boy's arm, and you could clearly see the dark red blood streaming out from the straw and into the spider's mouth. On the ground of this hillside cave were various bones of all different types of beasts piled up like mountains. One could only imagine the amount of time the demonic spider beast had spent living here and the number of poor souls, humans and animals alike, that had fallen prey to it. Kai Yang had no time to spare to think about this spider's capabilities and form an appropriate plan. Every second he delayed increased the chances of this little boy ascending straight to heaven. After a moment's silence, he suddenly charged forward. The enormously large, flower-patterned spider did not expect to be disturbed at that moment. Shortly after Kai Yang charged forward, a large amount of force was applied to the side of the demonic spider, and a large hole was torn in the web. The flower-patterned spider fell alongside Kai Yang. The little boy also fell through the hole and onto the ground. Being attacked so suddenly caused the flower-patterned spider to be furious. Its 8 long, hairy legs stamped the ground, and all of its eyes focused on Kai Yang. Before he even had time to get up, he was pinned down by a single pounce from the flower-patterned spider. Kai Yang snarled, a steel fist flew out and landed squarely on the throat of the spider. This momentarily stunned it. Kai Yang took the opportunity to kick the spider, sending it flying away. With a single roll, Kai Yang got to his feet and crouched down, his eyes fully focused on the movements of that flower-patterned spider. After that small confrontation, Kai Yang's furiously beating heart had calmed slightly. For that demonic beast's rank was not that high, otherwise he would even be able to struggle against it. It's most likely that it's only a first-realm demonic beast. However, even if it was only a first-realm demonic beast, given Kai Yang's current strength, it was still a difficult opponent. As both sides were sizing up their opponents, the flowered-patterned spider started to show signs of impatience, and it wasn't just him. Kai Yang began to exhibit them as well. It seemed that the little boy had lost too much blood and was showing signs of poisoning. If the current situation could not be resolved quickly, then there would be no time to save him. Abruptly, the flower-patterned spider opened its mouth to spit out a long, gem-silk thread. It spat the thread towards Kai Yang, signaling the start of its attack. Previously, Kai Yang had learnt about this thread's durability, so naturally he was wary to not be trapped by it. At once, he rolled to the side and narrowly dodged the attack. The flower-patterned spider didn't show much reaction to his dodge and continued to spit out other thread pieces. By the time Kai Yang noticed the spider wasn't aiming at him, it was already too late. The entire cave had been covered by a web of these threads, sealing off his exits and trapping him inside. Is it forcing me to fight to the death? Kai Yang laughed at that thought. Any fear he had previously harbored was quickly expelled by the arrogance seeping out from his bones, pumping adrenaline through his body. With the current situation, if he didn't kill the spider, he would not be able to leave. Since it had come to that, he could only fight to the bitter end. Either you die or I die. With time ticking, Kai Yang could not afford to delay. Firmly planting both feet on the ground, he sprinted towards the flower-patterned spider. Out flew another strand of thread. Fortunately, Kai Yang was on guard, so how could he not avoid it? After dodging 3 of these threads in succession, he had finally closed the distance between them. But before he could throw out a punch, that flower-patterned spider raised its front 2 legs and drove them towards him. Kai Yang could only lift up his arm to block. The spider's forelimbs pierced through his arm. Kai Yang roared out in pain, his blood boiled out. Not only was he not in a fearful panic, instead he had an indescribable feeling of excitement and anticipation in his heart. All of his bones clanking together caused a warm feeling pass through his entire body. Throwing out a punch, Kai Yang's fist whistled through the air and smashed into the eyes on the left-hand side of the flower-patterned spider's head. The moment his fist hit, it pulverized 2 eyes. The flower-patterned spider was horrified. Even with its limited intellectual capacity, it knew to fear that human with blood dripping from their arm. When it went to retract its 2 legs that were lodged in Kai Yang's arms, the spider found that the arm muscles had tightened around its forelimbs so the spider couldn't pull them out. Kai Yang's second punch followed shortly after his first, pulverizing another 2 eyes. The flower-patterned spider screeched out in pain, incessantly trying to retreat, but its hind legs could only scratch at the ground. In desperation, it lashed out at Kai Yang, leaving many shallow wounds on his arms. Although they weren't deep, they still drew blood. But the pain only served to increase Kai Yang's excitement. His whole body bubbled with overflowing strength. The corners of his mouth curved into a cold and merciless smile. His fists flew endlessly towards the spider's forehead. Under the unceasing barrage of attacks, the flower-patterned spider's forehead cracked open, and its bodily fluids oozed out. A dismal whimper escaped from its mouth. The flower pattern did not wish to sit and wait for its death. From its mouth, it spat out streams of its web, and at such close proximity, the web wrapped Kai Yang up. However, at that moment, the flower-patterned spider was in a horrible state. Its head was disfigured so much that it had nearly burst. If it hadn't become a demonic beast and gained the tenacious vitality that is associated with it, it would have already died many times over. Since this was the case, even though it had trapped him with its web, under Kai Yang's relentless fists, it soon ceased all signs of struggling. Kai Yang would have never imagined he could win a fight with a demonic beast. Furthermore, not only had he survived, he had also killed it. Even though it was a first-realm demonic beast, it was still not something a cultivator at the tempered body 5th stage should be able to defeat. Although Kai Yang's wounds weren't considered light, he didn't feel much pain from them, as if they nothing at all. After certifying that the flower pattern spider was truly dead, Kai Yang went to extract the leg that had pierced into his arm. When he pulled it out, a gush of warm blood followed. Without even pausing to inspect his injuries, Kai Yang tore apart the spider web that was binding him and rushed to the little boy's side. Gently cradling his body, he brought him out of the cave. The little boy's father had managed to finally escape from his web cocoon. And just as he was preparing to run further into the cave, he saw a blood-drenched Kai Yang carry out his son. He quickly inquired, "What happened to him?" "He has lost too much blood and has also been poisoned," Kai Yang replied. After reaching the cave's entrance, Kai Yang placed the little boy onto the ground and raced towards his fallen bag. Taking out some of the herbs inside, he began chewing on them. Without hesitation, he called over the hunter, "Chew on these herbs to soften them, then feed them to him." The hunter was already scared out of his wits, so when he heard Kai Yang's orders, he didn't hesitate. Swiftly, he placed the herbs into his mouth and began to chew them diligently. In that moment, Kai Yang's mind was all too clear. His understanding of each herb's medicinal properties began to appear in his mind within his mind. Which herbs could detoxify, which herbs could help with healing, which herbs could help staunch blood flow. The knowledge flowing through his mind was comparable to that of a veteran pharmacist. After a short period of time, Kai Yang took out the herbs he had been chewing on and smeared them over the little boy's arm. The hunter followed his actions and began to feed the chewed-up herbs to his son. Under the nervous gazes of the two people, color gradually returned to the boy's pale face and his breathing steadied. The hunter could finally release the tension in his heart and fell on his buttocks. Crying out loudly, he said, "Fortunately nothing happened, fortunately nothing happened." Kai Yang poured cold water on his newfound hope. "Not yet, my herbs are only low-leveled ones and can only alleviate his symptoms. You have to leave the mountain and find a doctor, otherwise I'm afraid that the poison will become incurable." The hunter could only listen to Kai Yang's advice. Immediately he said, "Then I shall go take him to find a doctor now." "There's no hurry," said Kai Yang as he held out his hand to stop him. "Allow your son to stabilize first, then move him." "Oh, what the savior says is correct." With such a great catastrophe befalling on the hunter, he had long since lost his nerve. So whatever Kai Yang said, he would follow. After replying, he remembered that his savior was also injured. His injuries were not light, so he worriedly asked, "Savior, do you not want to also treat your own wounds?" Kai Yang replied, "Not need." "But you have shed such a large amount of blood, how is that all right?" The hunter looked at him in shock. "I don't know." Standing up, Kai Yang jumped up and down vivaciously. "Even I don't know, but I feel great." He not only felt great, but also excited. Kai Yang suspected all this was somehow related to his golden skeleton, but how could he explain it to a simple hunter? As he thought back to the recent fight, Kai Yang's blood began to boil once again. That was the very first time he had ever been in a life or death situation. But he had not experienced even the slightest amount of fear. Instead, he had only felt enjoyment at the feeling of blood splattering all around him. Like it was the most common occurrence. "That's right, please wait a bit. I will return soon." As he picked up his bag, Kai Yang once again rushed into the cave. The hunter thought he had gone to sort out the demonic beast's corpse, but that was not it. Although the flower-pattern spider was a demonic beast, its corpse didn't hold any value, it was too low-leveled. Kai Yang's goal was to pick herbs growing inside the cave. Before he had begun his battle with the flower-pattern spider, he had discovered a large amount of purple-colored flowers. Previously he didn't have the time to examine them, but now that he thought back to them, his spirits couldn't help but rise. If he didn't see incorrectly, those purple-colored flowers were actually the three-leaved chaos spirit flowers that he desperately needed. Three-leaved chaos spirit flowers grew in dark and damp places with a lot of corpses, making this cave an ideal environment for them to grow in. With his heart full of anticipation as he entered the cave, Kai Yang nearly laughed, such was his joy. Helping others will really reward you well. It seemed that this saying was true. If he had not come to rescue the father and son pair, then he would never have found the herbs that he was looking for. The vast expanse of purple flowers in front of him truly were the three-leaved chaos spirit flowers. Plus, there appeared to be a vast quantity of them. A quick count showed there were at least 30 to 40 of these flowers. These small purple flowers, all bunched together, would make anyone who saw them feel delighted. Without further ado, Kai Yang hurriedly took out his shovel and started to harvest these herbs. While he busied himself, Kai Yang's heart was more than content. Just as he was preparing to leave the cave, Kai Yang discovered a red, mushroom-like plant in the corner of the cave. His curiosity piqued, Kai Yang walked towards it to carefully examine it. This thing was about the size of a bowl, dark red, and was like a mushroom or fungus. Kai Yang didn't recognize this thing, for it was not mentioned in the little book that Treasurer Meng had given him. Could it be a priceless treasure? Rolling up his sleeves, Kai Yang went to pick the mushroom-like plant. As for the matter of its identity, he could work it later. It wouldn't take much space up anyway. By the time Kai Yang exited the cave, his bag was filled to the brim. "Let's go, I will descend the mountain with you," Kai Yang told the hunter, treating him like an equal. "Many thanks to the savior." The hunter was moved to tears, for he knew that Kai Yang was worried they would encounter more danger on the journey out. That's why he was following them. "We just happen to be traveling the same path, no need for thanks," Kai Yang replied humbly, and the three of them quickly descended the mountain. By evening they had arrived back at town, and in the dark, they searched for the doctor's home. Even after settling the little boy, Kai Yang wasn't in a rush to leave. After all, that night, the little boy had given him some of his rations. So he had to stay until the boy opened his eyes. Only after that would his heart be at peace. Inside, the hunter was paced around restlessly, worried about his boy. Before long, the doctor shooed him out, saying he was too noisy. Dr. Chu said, "It is fortunate we did some emergency treatment. Otherwise my son would have truly lost his life. Savior, your mercy and kindness I will be forever unable to repay. Even if I worked hard my entire life, I will be unable." As soon as he finished speaking, the hunter knelt down in front of Kai Yang. Kai Yang did not help him up but smiled and said, "Big brother Zhong, men only kneel before gold. With you kneeling, you have harmed our good relationship. You do not need to kneel in the future. I also ate some of your child's rations. If you are talking about owing, then I owe you too." After finishing his sentence, he went to help Hunter Zhong up. Hunter Zhong was moved to tears. "Savior, you truly are a good person." As they were speaking, the doctor walked outside and said to Hunter Zhong, "It is no longer dangerous, so you need not worry. But because he has lost a large amount of blood, he will be asleep for a while longer, but once he wakes up, he'll be fine." When they heard those words, Kai Yang and Hunter Zhong both let out sighs of relief. Once he relaxed, Kai Yang felt a wave of exhaustion flow through his body. Today had been far too exciting. He had also received many wounds and lost a lot of blood. Even with his previous energy, his body had still received damage, so when he relaxed himself, he fell asleep, sleeping until the sun rose. Early in the morning, Sky Tower. Many of the disciples woke up early, with high spirits. Together they gathered in a certain region, waiting in anticipation. Thirsty eyes, craned necks, an unruly state of mind, these things were consistent throughout the crowd. Together they surrounded the house like a housewife who had waited many years for her husband to return home, exemplifying that devotion and expectation. With the passing of time, the number of people who gathered gradually increased. It was like they were telepathically connected. Everybody turned their heads at the same time to look at one place. That place was the path that led to the residence of Kai Yang, a small little hut. Today was the day when they could once again challenge Kai Yang. This was equivalent to a free contribution point box. How could these disciples give up this golden opportunity? Some people pitied Kai Yang's predicament. For every 5 days he was challenged and beaten to a pulp. This was really a bit too brutal. However, sympathy alone could not help Kai Yang. Even if they did not challenge him, many others would gladly take their place. In the end, he will still be beaten to a pulp, so they might as well do it themselves. At least they could take it easy on him. When they thought about it like that, they all came to try their luck. If he chose me, I will definitely hit lightly, so he will not be injured too badly. Many people were making excuses like this in their hearts. Typically Kai Yang was already awake and had begun to sweep the area by this time, but it was really strange today. Even after waiting quite a while, they still had not seen Kai Yang. Even when they tiptoed over to look around, they could not find him. What's with Kai Yang? Did he oversleep? How come he has yet to come out? I don't know. Thinking about it, has anyone seen him in these past few days? Could it be that he has already left Sky Tower? Impossible. It's not like you don't know about Kai Yang's stubbornness. Even if you killed him, he would not leave. If he really wanted to leave, he would have left a couple months ago, when he was made into a trial disciple. Why would he wait such a long time just to leave in the end anyway? Surprisingly, with all the discussion going on, no one knew that a few days prior, Kai Yang had asked for leave to enter the Black Wind Mountains and had yet to return. Though this was no surprise, for during normal days, Kai Yang did not interact much with others, and so naturally no one knew of his whereabouts. While this group were making a ruckus, a person had started to walk towards this crowd. His face was flawless like jade, and his body also like jade. He really was a handsome youth. But no one knew why at that moment. This youth's expression was very gloomy. As he walked, he was gnashing his teeth and cursing someone. Following behind this youth were a large number of Sky Tower disciples. Surrounding him, they made him the center of attention. While the youth was surrounded, he showed a very unpleasant face. He said in doubt, "Why is it? Why are there so many people here?" In response to his request, someone hurriedly came up to him and informed him in a lowered voice, "Master Su, today is the day when we can challenge Kai Yang. So many fellow disciples have gathered here today to collect some contribution points." The youth that was called Master Su furrowed his eyebrows before laughing heartedly. "Looks like our fellow disciple Kai Yang is in an abyss of suffering." His words were full delight at Kai Yang's misfortune. Basically, he is challenged every 5 days. Not only that, he will not admit defeat unless he can no longer stand properly. The person who had spoken earlier further explained. Master Su laughed again. This young master feels that the resentment in his heart has decreased greatly. But this is not enough. I must make him leave Sky Tower. For as long as he is not a Sky Tower disciple, I can do whatever I please with him and no one can say a word. Master Su is right. That brat dared to tarnish your good name. He really cannot differentiate between a noble and a horse. He doesn't even bother to inquire as to Master Su's identity. He is too arrogant. This ass-kissing made Master Su feel much better, causing him to repeatedly nod his head. Master Su, whose reputation Kai Yang had tarnished, was exactly the same Su Mu he had met in Black Plum Village. It was the same Su Mu, along with the 2 Han men, upon whom Kai Yang had enforced justice. Because of this, Su had flown into a rage, inquiring around Sky Tower on the identity of Jie Yang. In the end, he had found out about the ins and outs about Kai Yang in less than a day. After all, he did have his own network of connections and channels. But under the iron rule of the main gate, he could not easily move his hand and had waited until this day to bring a bunch of people over to cause trouble for Kai Yang. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that so many other people would also come for Kai Yang. This made Su somewhat displeased. Waving his hand, he said, "Make them leave. Tell that today, Kai Yang will only be mine today." This statement made Kai Yang sound like some sort of young girl, or like an available prostitute, ready to be brought. The person next to him promptly walked into the crowd, cupped his hands and said, "Fellow disciples, today's battle with Kai Yang, Master Su has already reserved it. So I ask my fellow disciples to please line up at the door and watch. I am sorry any inconvenience." This announcement took many by surprise. They all turned to Su in confusion and asked, "Why should we?" Every time, Kai Yang would use his broom to choose the opponent, so for what reason should we allow you to fight him? Even if he did not choose, shouldn't it be first come, first served? After that was said, someone pulled at the speaker and whispered to them, "That is Su Mu. Do you know who Su Mu is?" "Who?" This person had just been accepted, so he really didn't know who Su Mu was. Idiot! There is an elder who is surnamed Su. There is also a core disciple within the top 10 surnamed Su. Why don't you say who he is? That person spoke. Although the one listening didn't nod his head in understanding, he still understood the meaning behind those words. He had been temporarily stunned by the information. When he heard that Su had such powerful people backing him, how could he dare make another sound? Winning against Kai Yang will not even earn me many contribution points, so it's best not to offend him. Yes, yes, yes. The person replied while cold sweat dripped down his back. Su was very satisfied with the reaction to his demand, but witnessing this made him snort softly in disdain. Although today's battle with Kai Yang had been secured by Su, the crowd had yet to disperse. They didn't know what Kai Yang had done to offend Su, so of course they wanted to stay behind and watch the show. After waiting for some time, Kai Yang still hadn't appeared. Su impatiently asked, "Where is he?" "I don't know. Usually, he is already out sweeping the grounds by this time, so I don't know why he has yet to come out." "Master Su, should we check his hut?" After thinking for a bit, Su nodded and replied, "That's a good idea. He is just a small and insignificant sweeper, yet he dares to make this Master Su painstakingly wait for him. I will make him pay for this later." The location of Kai Yang's residence was no secret, so the people around Su swiftly lead the way. The ones who had stayed behind to watch the show also followed, creating a grand procession of disciples. A short while later, the procession of people had arrived at Kai Yang's small hut. When they saw the pitiful and wretched state of his hut, with holes littering the hut walls, they were not surprised. For no apparent reason, Su lifted his hand pointed at the hut. "That brat lives here." In response to Master Su's question, because Kai Yang is a trial disciple, he must provide for all his own clothing, food, housing, and training materials. The main gate will definitely not provide them for him. This hut was probably built by his own hands. Good, good, good. Su laughed happily. Thinking about how drenched Kai Yang would become on rainy days elevated his spirits. Sighing, Su controlled his smile and strode confidently, like a dragon or a proud-like tiger, forward. With a loud voice, taking care to clearly articulate each word, he called out, "You, Kai Yang. Get your ass out for this Master Su and prepare to receive a nice beating." That loud shout was powerful, like a storm, and yet unlike a storm it was not detached and uncaring, it was filled with utter hatred. The hatred and bloodthirsty desire made everyone present shiver in their shoes. This clearly displayed the level hatred between Kai Yang and Su Mu to the crowd. Evidently it was not a small issue. Su Mu stood there, exuding a majestic presence. In this moment it appeared that not even the 8 winds could move him. After he finished shouting, he waited expectantly outside the door for Kai Yang to come running out, while pissing his pants and crying to beg for mercy. The more he thought about it, the more arrogant he became. But no matter how long he waited, there was not even a hint of movement within the hut. Su Mu's face was now full of rage. Snarling, he called out again, "Kai Yang, be a smart one and get your ass out here. Otherwise we will come inside and drag you out." Yet, there was still no reply. Su Mu now felt there was something odd, for if Kai Yang was really inside, there should be at least sounds of him breathing. Could it be that he was not inside? Su Mu signaled the people around him exaggeratedly. That person promptly sprang forward, forcefully kicked down the wooden door and rushed into the small hut. Not long after they had entered, that person ran out again and reported to Su Mu, "Master Su, there is no one inside. There is also a small accumulation of dust. Looks like this trash knew that a calamity was approaching, so had fled already." Fled? Su Mu nearly vomited blood in anger. He had racked his brains, scheming for many days, all in preparation for this day, the day he would get to exact his revenge and make up for the shame he suffered at the hands of Kai Yang. He had even brought many disciples to come and watch the show, yet that Kai Yang had unexpectedly fled? This was like a powerful punch had been let out, but landed on a piece of cotton. It made Su Mu feel gloomy and depressed. Speaking about it, these past fews, we haven't seen even a hair of Kai Yang. A wise man will submit to the circumstances. Since Kai Yang had offended this Su Mu, he probably knew that all hell would break loose, forcing him to leave the main gate. No wonder even after waiting such a long time, he had yet to appear. Ah! Now that Kai Yang has left, we will no longer be able to obtain easy contribution points. The crowd muttered softly. None of their mutterings escaped Su Mu's ears. Although he was pleased by the respect they were showing him, he hadn't been able to extract his revenge. Thus Su Mu's heart was still unsatisfied. After thinking for a while, with a gloomy face, Su Mu could only accept the fact he would not get to extract his revenge on Kai Yang today. In a fit of rage he said, "That trash really got lucky, however my anger will not dissipate, I will get something. Burn down this pitiful hut." This demand alarmed everybody present. Even the people Su Mu had brought with him were stunned. One asked, "Master Su, is it a good idea to start a fire inside the school? What are you afraid of?" Su Mu eyed him. "Even if the sky falls down, I will be there to catch it. Furthermore, it isn't even important to the school. So what if it is destroyed? It wouldn't be much of a loss. Also, leaving this ragged hut standing will harm this younger master's eyes." Hearing him say that dispelled the concerns within their hearts. With the Master Su as backing them, burning this hut is nothing. Before they lit the fire, some went to look for dry grass to use as kindling. After a while, everything was prepared. Grinning, Su Mu lit a torch. Its flames distorted his face greatly, making him appear evil. "Kai Yang, I warn you never to let me see your face in the future. Otherwise I will not let you live or die," Su Mu said while grinding his teeth. Just as he was preparing to throw the torch into the hut, a person to his side tapped his shoulder and whilst releasing a bloodthirsty aura inquired of him, "What is this for?" Su Mu didn't even need to think before replying, "Burning a house." "Why are you burning my house?" That person's voice carried a hint of anger. "Your house?" Su Mu curled his lip ferociously and turned his head. As soon as he saw the speaker, he immediately jumped to the side like a frightened rabbit seeing a wolf. Then with an exaggerated movement, he assumed a defensive posture. His face was filled with alarm and the hairs on the back of his neck all rose. It was because the appearance of the person who had spoken was too frightening. Not only were his clothes all tattered, his hair was messed up, with plants sticking out all over the place and dirty beyond compare. His body also displayed numerous bloody marks, his clothes were bloodstained and a bulging bag was tied around his back. God only knew what was in there. A gentle breeze blew past, causing his tattered pants to flap, revealing a strong and sturdy leg covered in leg hair. The wind carried with it the stench from Kai Yang's several dirty body. Su Mu was unable to stomach that smell. That appearance, coupled with the blood and smell, made Su Mu want to vomit up his 3 meals. That posture, that manner, was strangely familiar. If he were to hold a broken bowl in one hand, then he would look exactly like a beggar. But why did he feel that this horrifying person looked familiar? Su Mu looked more closely, becoming more and more confused. After he thought for a while, he cried out, "Kai Yang!" If it's not Kai Yang, then who could it be? Even though his body shape had changed and his face was covered in filth, how could Su Mu, who hated Kai Yang deep down in his bones, not recognize him? If he could not recognize him, then who could? Kai Yang also recognized Su Mu. Grinning widely, he revealed a set of ivory white teeth. If it isn't fellow disciple Su, who brazenly tried to frame others in Black Plum Village. The voice that said so was full of ridicule, turning Su Mu's white face a deep red. Stamping his foot, Su Mu retorted, "Kai Yang, you did not choose to walk the path to heaven but chose to walk through hell's gates. You are destined to die today. You want to find issue with me?" His brow creasing, Kai Yang asked. "Nonsense!" Su Mu cried proudly. "You thought I came to see you? If you have something to settle with me, come and find me. Why do you need to burn down my house?" Kai Yang questioned. Su Mu promptly threw the touch away and rushed to step on it, like he was stamping on Kai Yang directly. Venting on the torch, after a while, the torch was finally stamped out. This moment of pause allowed the people present to understand what was happening. They finally realized that Kai Yang had not run away from fear of Su Mu, but rather that he had only left to complete some business. But what business did he have to complete which had caused his appearance to become so appalling? Such bloodiness, isn't it a bit too much? Also, the tears in his clothes were obviously made by some sort of sharp weapon. Who did he go and fight with? And was it a life and death type of fight? Want to keep listening? Find the full novel on Arcwave at arcwave.app. Clean audio chapters and your progress saved across devices.